The alarms had been screaming for 6 hours straight. Governor Tyler stood at the command center window and watched another defense ship explode in the distance. The flash lit up the dark sky of Nexus 7 for just a moment before fading into nothing. That was the fourth ship lost today. 4 ships and over 200 crew members gone in the span of a single morning. The Kreth had come without warning. They always did. Tyler pressed her 4-fingered hand against the cold glass and tried to keep her breathing steady. Her pale blue skin had turned almost gray from stress and exhaustion. Behind her, the command center buzzed with panicked voices. Officers shouted coordinates and damage reports. Technicians tried desperately to restore communication with ships that would never answer again. "Governor, the swarm is moving toward the eastern mining platforms," Officer Wren reported. His voice cracked with fear. "We have 3,000 workers in that sector." Tylis closed her large amber eyes for a moment. 3,000 lives. 3,000 families who had come to this distant moon, seeking honest work and a better future. Now they faced a nightmare that had destroyed entire civilizations. The Kreth were unlike anything else in the known galaxy. They were not a species that could be reasoned with or negotiated with. They did not want territory or resources or slaves. They simply consumed. Each creature was the size of a small shuttle, with bodies made of living silicon that could tear through starship hulls like paper. They moved through space in massive swarms, devouring everything in their path. 17 civilizations had fallen to them over the past 1,000 years. Entire planets had been stripped bare, and now they had come to Nexus 7. Get those workers to the underground shelters. Underground shelters, Tylis ordered. Use every transport we have. The transports are too slow, Wren said quietly. The Kreth will reach them before we can complete evacuation. Tylis knew he was right. She had run the calculations herself a dozen times. The math was simple and brutal. They could save some of their people, but not all. Never all. She turned to face her officers. These were good people who had served the colony faithfully for years. They deserved honesty, even if the truth was terrible. Send a distress call to the Galactic Concordat, she said. Request immediate military assistance. The communications officer, a young female named Sella, worked quickly at her station. Her fingers trembled as she typed the emergency codes. Within minutes, she had established a connection with Concordat High Command. The response came faster than expected, but its contents crushed whatever hope remained in the room. "Governor Tylis," the Concordat Admiral said through the viewscreen, "we have received your distress call. I am truly sorry, but the nearest fleet is stationed in the Rethner system. Even at maximum speed, they cannot reach you for 18 standard cycles." 18 cycles. Almost 3 weeks in Earth time. The colony would be completely destroyed within 2 days at most. "There must be something you can do," Tylis pleaded. "We have over 50,000 civilians here. Children, families." The Admiral's expression showed genuine sympathy, but his words offered nothing. "I wish I could help. The Concordat simply does not have military assets positioned anywhere near your sector. I'm sorry, Governor. Truly sorry." The connection ended and silence fell over the command center. Officers stared at their screens without seeing them. Some wept quietly. Others simply sat frozen in shock. Tylis felt something inside her break. She had led this colony for 12 years. She had watched it grow from a small mining outpost into a thriving community. She knew every street, every building, every family. And now she would watch it all die. "There is one other option," Officer Wren said softly. Tylis looked at him. Wren was the oldest officer on her staff, a veteran who had served in 3 different systems before retiring to Nexus 7. He had seen things most the Lamthi could not imagine. "The humans," he continued. They have a patrol ship in the Tessara sector. That is only 6 hours from here at their cruising speed. The room went very still. Tylus could feel the tension rising immediately. The humans. Even speaking their name felt dangerous. "We cannot contact the humans," Sella said quickly. Concordat Protocol strictly forbids direct communication with Deathworlder species without proper authorization. "Concordat Protocol will not save us," Ren replied. "The humans might." Tylus had heard the stories about humans, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had. They came from a world called Earth, a planet so hostile that it seemed designed to produce killers. The gravity was crushing by Concordat standards. The atmosphere contained a gas called oxygen that was corrosive to most materials. The temperature swings between seasons were extreme enough to kill unprepared species. And the planet itself was filled with predators, natural disasters, and countless ways to die. Somehow, humans had not only survived on this death world, but thrived. They had clawed their way to the top of their food chain, through sheer stubbornness and an almost frightening capacity for violence. When they finally reached the stars a century ago, the Concordat had watched them with a mixture of fascination and terror. Humans were classified as Deathworlders, one of only a handful of species to earn that designation. Most civilizations avoided them entirely. Those who had dealt with humans reported strange and contradictory things. The humans could be incredibly gentle and kind one moment, then terrifyingly brutal the next. They formed deep emotional bonds with other species, even non-sentient animals. They laughed at danger. They ran toward explosions instead of away from them. They seemed almost incapable of understanding when a situation was hopeless. "Contacting the humans is too dangerous," another officer argued. "We do not know what they might do. They could be worse than the Kreth." "The Kreth will definitely kill us," Ren said. "The humans might save us. I would rather take a chance on survival than accept certain death." Tylus listened to her officers argue back and forth. The fear of the humans was deeply rooted in Volanti culture. They had been taught since childhood that Deathworlders were unpredictable and dangerous. But Ren was right. The Kreth offered no chance at all. The humans, whatever they might be, at least represented possibility. She made her decision. "Open a channel to the human patrol ship," Tylus ordered. "I will take full responsibility for breaking protocol." Sella hesitated for just a moment, then began working at her station. The connection took several minutes to establish. Human communication technology used different frequencies than Concordat standard, and their encryption protocols were surprisingly complex. Finally, a voice came through the speakers. It was unlike anything Tylus had heard before. Human voices had a strange quality to them, deeper and rougher than Volanti speech. "This is the patrol vessel Persistence. Captain Elena Vasquez speaking. We received your distress beacon. What is your situation?" Tylus stepped forward. "Captain Vasquez, I am Governor Tylus of the Volanti mining colony on Nexus 7. We are under attack by a Kreth swarm. Our defenses have been destroyed. We have over 50,000 civilians with no way to evacuate. The Concordat fleet cannot reach us in time." There was a pause. Tylus could hear voices in the background, speaking rapidly in the human language. She could not understand the words, but the tone seemed urgent. "Governor, how large is the swarm?" Captain Vasquez asked. "Our sensors counted over 300 individual Kreth before our satellite network was destroyed. There may be more." Another pause. This time, Tylus heard something that sounded almost like laughter. But that made no sense. No one could laugh at such terrible news. "Understood, Governor. The Persistence is changing course now. We will arrive in approximately 6 hours. Begin evacuating your civilians to your most protected shelters. Focus on underground locations if possible." "And Governor?" "Yes, Captain." Tell your people to hold on. Help is coming." The connection ended. Tyler stood in silence, unsure what to feel. One ship. The humans were sending one ship against a swarm that had already destroyed an entire defense fleet. "They are insane," Officer Wren said quietly. But there was something in his voice that might have been hope. "Perhaps," Tylus replied. "But they are coming. That is more than anyone else has offered." She turned to face her staff. There was work to do. 6 hours was not much time, but it was something. And something was infinitely better than nothing. "Begin full evacuation procedures," she ordered. "Every civilian goes underground. Strip the surface buildings of food, water, and medical supplies. I want everyone in the deep shelters within 4 hours." Her officers moved to obey. The fear was still there, but now it had competition. Hope had entered the room, small and fragile, but real. Somewhere out in the black void of space, a single human ship was racing toward them. Tylus did not know what would happen when it arrived. She did not know if the humans could actually fight the Kreth, or if they were simply rushing toward their own deaths. But they were coming. Strangers from a death world, traveling through the darkness to help people they had never met. Tylus looked out the window again. Another flash lit the sky as the Kreth destroyed something else. The swarm was growing closer. Time was running out. "Hold on," she whispered to no one. "Just hold on." 6 hours had never seemed so long. The evacuation was chaos. Tylus watched from the command center as thousands of Volantes streamed toward the underground shelters. Families carried whatever they could hold. Children cried in confusion. Elderly citizens moved too slowly, helped along by younger hands. The mining colony had never practiced for this kind of emergency. No one had ever expected the Kreth to come to such a remote moon. 4 hours passed. Then 5. The Kreth swarm continued its slow advance across the system, consuming debris and wreckage as it moved. The creatures seemed to be in no hurry. They knew their prey could not escape. They had done this many times before. Officer Wren approached Tylus with a data tablet. "Governor, we have moved 43,000 civilians to the deep shelters. The remaining 7,000 are still being transported from the outer mining platforms. Will they make it in time?" Wren's silence was answer enough. Tylus closed her eyes. 7,000 people. 7,000 souls who might not reach safety before the swarm arrived. She wanted to scream. She wanted to break something. But governors did not have that luxury. They had to remain calm. They had to lead. "Keep pushing," she ordered. "Every minute counts." The 6th hour arrived with no sign of the human ship. Tylus felt her hope beginning to fade. Perhaps the humans had changed their minds. Perhaps they had realized the situation was hopeless and turned back. She could not blame them if they had. What kind of fool would fly a single ship into a swarm of 300 Kreth? Then Sela shouted from her station, "Governor!" Something just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Tylus rushed to the sensor display. At first, she could not understand what she was seeing. The object that had appeared was not like any Concordat vessel she had ever encountered. It was roughly cylindrical, but covered in strange angles and protrusions. Its hull was scarred and pitted, marked with what looked like battle damage that had never been fully repaired. There were things welded to its exterior that made no sense. Pieces of other ships, perhaps, or trophies of some kind. The vessel broadcast no identification signal. It sent no greeting or announcement. It simply appeared and immediately began accelerating toward the Kreth swarm at a speed that made Tylus gasp. "That cannot be correct," she said, staring at the readings. "Those acceleration numbers would kill any crew. Humans can survive much higher G-forces than we can," Wren said quietly. "Their bodies are built differently. Stronger bones, more efficient cardiovascular systems. They evolved on a world with heavy gravity. Tylus watched the sensor display with growing disbelief. The human ship was not approaching cautiously. It was not scanning the swarm or taking defensive positions. It was charging directly at the enemy like a predator rushing toward prey. A communication signal came through. The same rough voice from before. "Governor Tylus, this is Captain Vasquez. We have arrived. Please confirm the status of your evacuation." Tylus found her voice. "Captain, we have most of our civilians in shelters. 7,000 are still in transit from the outer platforms." "Captain, what are you doing? You cannot attack the swarm directly. They will destroy you." "With respect, Governor, we have been handling situations like this since before your species achieved spaceflight. Focus on getting your people to safety. We will handle the Kreth." "But there are over 300 of them. You have one ship." There was a pause. When Vasquez spoke again, Tylus could hear something strange in her voice. It took a moment to recognize the emotion. It was amusement. The human was actually amused. "Governor, I have seen the data on Kreth attacks. They have never faced humans before. They do not know what they are dealing with. Trust me. Get your people underground and keep them there until we give the all clear." The connection ended. Tylus turned back to the sensor display and watched the impossible happen. The human ship, Persistence, reached the outer edge of the Kreth swarm and did not slow down. It plunged directly into the mass of creatures, weapons firing in all directions. The Volanthi sensor systems could barely track what was happening. The ship moved in ways that seemed to defy physics, spinning and rolling and changing direction with no concern for the crew inside. The Kreth reacted with confusion at first. They were not used to prey that attacked. Their swarm patterns began to shift, individual creatures breaking away from the main mass to pursue the intruder. This was their standard hunting behavior. Isolate the target. Surround it. Consume it. But the human ship would not be isolated. Every time the Kreth tried to surround it, the Persistence broke through their formation. Its weapons targeted the creatures with precision that seemed almost supernatural. One by one, Kreth began to die. "This is impossible," Sella whispered. "No ship can move like that. No crew can survive those maneuvers." Tylus said nothing. She was too focused on the battle to speak. She had studied military tactics during her training. She understood strategy and ship-to-ship combat. What she was watching did not fit any model she knew. This was not warfare. This was hunting. The Persistence took damage. Tylus saw hull breaches appear on the sensor readings. She saw atmosphere venting from damaged sections. She saw the ship's speed drop as systems failed. Any Concordat vessel would have retreated by now. Any sane captain would have recognized that the battle was lost. The humans did not retreat. They kept fighting. They kept killing. Even as their ship burned around them, even as creatures tore at their hull, they pressed forward. A Kreth latched onto the rear section of the Persistence and began tearing through the armor. The sensor readings showed the creature burrowing deeper, getting closer to the reactor core. Tylus waited for the inevitable explosion. Instead, she saw something she could not explain. A section of the hull opened, and several small figures emerged into the vacuum of space. They were wearing armored suits and carrying weapons. They were attacking the Kreth directly. They were fighting the creature hand-to-hand in the void. "They sent people outside," Ren said in disbelief. "They actually sent crew members to fight in space." The humans killed the Kreth. It took several minutes and cost them at least one crew member whose life sign vanished from the readings. But they killed it. Then they returned inside the damaged ship and continued fighting. Hours passed. Tylus lost track of time as she watched the battle unfold. The Kreth swarm was large, And even with the humans killing dozens of creatures, there were always more. The Persistence was falling apart. Systems failed one after another. Crew members died. The ship should have been destroyed 100 times over, but it kept flying. It kept fighting. Tylus finally understood what she was witnessing. She had heard stories about human persistence, about their legendary endurance, about their refusal to surrender even in hopeless situations. She had dismissed these stories as exaggeration. Surely no species could be that stubborn. Surely survival instincts would eventually override courage. She had been wrong. The humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to last. Every moment they kept the Kreth focused on them was another moment for the Volanti evacuees to reach safety. Every creature they killed was one less threat to the colony. They were trading their lives for time, and they seemed completely willing to make that trade. Officer Wren spoke quietly. There's a word in the human language. They call it sacrifice. It means giving up something precious for the sake of others. I never truly understood the concept until now. Tylus felt tears forming in her eyes. She had called these people for help expecting nothing. She had assumed they would either refuse or fail. Instead, they had come without hesitation. They had thrown themselves into battle against impossible odds. They were dying for strangers. Get the remaining evacuees to safety, she ordered, her voice thick with emotion. We will not waste what they are giving us. On the sensor display, the Persistence continued its impossible fight. Its hull was breached in a dozen places. Half its weapons were offline. Its crew had suffered terrible casualties. But the ship was still moving, still fighting, still refusing to die. The Kreth had never encountered anything like this. They were predators who expected prey to flee or surrender. They did not know how to handle an enemy that simply would not stop. For the first time in their existence, the swarm began to show signs of hesitation, and somewhere in the chaos of battle, Captain Elena Vasquez smiled grimly and pushed her dying ship forward once again. The hunt was not over yet. 11 hours. The battle had raged for 11 hours without stopping. Governor Tylus had not slept. She had not eaten. She had barely moved from her position at the command center window. Her eyes were fixed on the sensor display, watching the impossible drama unfold in the void above her world. The Persistence was a wreck. There was no other word for it. The ship that had arrived looking scarred and battered now looked like it should not exist at all. Hull breaches covered almost every section. 3 of its 4 main engines were destroyed. Its weapon systems cycled between working and failing seemingly at random. The life sign readings showed that nearly half the crew was dead or critically injured. And still, the ship fought. Officer Wren had stopped trying to explain what he was seeing. The battle had gone beyond anything he could understand. Human science, human engineering, human courage. None of it made sense by Volanti standards. The ship should have been destroyed hours ago. The crew should have abandoned it. Every rational calculation said the fight was over. The humans had not received that memo. They are insane, Sella said softly. She had been saying variations of this phrase for hours. They are completely insane. Perhaps, Tylus replied. But look at the swarm count. The sensor display told a remarkable story. When the battle began, there had been over 300 Kreth in the swarm. Now there were fewer than 150. The humans had killed more than half the swarm with a single ship. It was a military achievement that would be studied for generations. A communication signal came through, weak and broken with static. Governor Tylus. Captain Vasquez's voice was strained. Tylus could hear alarms blaring in the background. Status report on your evacuation? All civilians are in the deep shelters, Tylus reported. Captain, please. You have done enough. You can retreat now. We are safe. Laughter came through the speakers. It was not the healthy laughter of someone telling jokes. It was the dark laughter of someone who had seen too much and stopped caring about their own survival. Retreat? Governor, we have not finished the job yet. Besides, my ship is not exactly in condition for a clean getaway. We committed to this fight. We will see it through. You will die, Tyler said. Everyone dies eventually, Governor. The trick is to make it count for something. The connection broke. Tyler stared at the speakers in silence. She wanted to cry. She wanted to reach through space and drag these stubborn, impossible humans to safety. They had already saved her colony. They had already done more than anyone could ask. Why would they not stop? Wren answered her unspoken question. It is how they are built, Governor. Humans do not know how to give up. Their ancestors survived an entire planet trying to kill them for millions of years. Surrender is not in their nature. On the sensor display, the Persistence made another attack run against the swarm. Its remaining weapons fired until they overheated. Its engines pushed until they nearly failed. The ship twisted and rolled through the mass of Kreth, somehow avoiding the killing blows that should have ended it 100 times. Then something. CHANGEDA, new signal appeared at the edge of the system. Then another. Then a third. Tylis felt her heart stop. More Kreth? Had the swarm called for reinforcements? Were they all going to die after everything? But the sensor readings did not match Kreth signatures. These were ships. Manufactured vessels with engine signatures and power cores. And they were broadcasting identification codes, human identification codes. 3 vessels incoming, Sella reported, her voice rising with excitement. Human registry. The Defiance, the Stubborn Fury, and the Second Wind. They are requesting communication. A new voice came through the speakers. It was different from Captain Vasquez, but had the same rough human quality. This is Captain Rodriguez of the freighter Defiance. We picked up your distress call about 10 hours ago and came as fast as we could. Looks like Elena started the party without us. Typical. You are not military vessels, Tyler said, staring at the sensor readings. Your ships are civilian freighters. That is correct, Governor. We are miners and traders, mostly. But we heard someone needed help, so here we are. Now, if you will excuse me, we have some overgrown bugs to squash. The 3 civilian ships accelerated toward the battle. They were not as fast as the Persistence, and their weapons were clearly improvised. But they moved with the same fearless aggression that Tylis had watched for hours. They did not hesitate. They did not scan the enemy first. They simply attacked. Tylis turned to Wren. They came from 10 hours away. They heard our distress call and traveled 10 hours to fight creatures that have destroyed civilizations. Why would they do that? Wren was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was filled with wonder. I read about human history once. Their species spent most of their existence fighting each other. Wars that killed millions. Conflicts that lasted generations. They came very close to destroying themselves many times. But they also had another tradition, one that seems to matter more to them than anything else. What tradition? They help strangers, even when it costs them, even when it makes no sense. Humans have something in their nature that makes them unable to ignore suffering. They see someone in trouble, and they feel compelled to act. It is not logical. It is not practical. But it is who they are. Tylis watched the 4 human ships fight together against the remaining Kreth. The Persistence was nearly dead, held together by nothing but determination. The 3 newcomers were taking damage almost immediately. But together, they formed something unstoppable. The Kreth swarm began to change its behavior. Instead of pressing the attack, individual creatures started pulling back. Their formations became defensive rather than aggressive. For beings that had spent their entire existence as apex predators, this was unprecedented. "They are afraid," Sela said in disbelief. "The Kreth are actually afraid." It was true. Tylus could see it in the swarm patterns. The creatures were no longer hunting. They were protecting themselves. The humans had done something that 17 civilizations had failed to do. They had made the Kreth feel like prey. The battle continued for another 2 hours. The human ships pushed forward relentlessly, never giving the swarm a chance to regroup. Kreth died by the dozens. The creatures that had once seemed invincible were being slaughtered by ships held together with emergency patches and pure stubbornness. Finally, it happened to the remaining Kreth. Fewer than 50 now broke formation entirely. They scattered in all directions, fleeing into the depths of space at maximum speed. The swarm that had threatened to destroy an entire colony was running away. The human ships did not pursue. Tylus watched in confusion as the 4 vessels held position, letting the surviving Kreth escape into the darkness. "Captain Vasquez," she called through the communication channel, "why are you letting them go? You could destroy them all." The response took a moment to arrive. When it came, Vasquez's voice was exhausted but satisfied. "We could, Governor, but there is no need. They have learned what happens when they attack worlds under human protection. They will spread that knowledge to other Kreth. The lesson will be more valuable than the kills. I do not understand. We did not come here to exterminate a species, Governor. We came here to save your people. That job is done. The Kreth are running. They will not return to this sector for a very long time, if ever. And every other Kreth swarm in the galaxy will hear about what happened here. They will learn that humans are not prey." Tylus struggled to process this. In Concordat military doctrine, you destroyed your enemies completely. You did not let threats survive to attack again later. The human approach seemed dangerously naive, but then she looked at the sensor readings again. 4 ships, 3 of them civilian vessels with improvised weapons, had just defeated a Kreth swarm. They had killed over 250 of the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, and they had done it to protect strangers they had never met. Perhaps the humans understood something about power that the Concordat did not. "Thank you," Tylus said softly. "Thank you for everything." "You are welcome, Governor. Now, if you do not mind, we have a lot of wounded that need medical attention. Any chance you have some doctors down there who would not mind helping out some ugly humans?" Despite everything, despite the terror and the exhaustion and the grief, Tylus found herself smiling. "Send your wounded down immediately. We will give them the best care we have." "Much appreciated, Governor." Persistence out. The communication ended. Tylus stood in the silent command center and watched the 4 human ships drift slowly toward her world. They were broken and bleeding, crewed by people who had sacrificed everything for strangers. And for the first time in 12 years as governor, Tylus felt truly hopeful about the future. The first human shuttle landed on Nexar 7 3 hours after the battle ended. Governor Tylus waited at the landing pad with her medical teams, unsure what to expect. She had seen humans only in recordings and images before. Meeting them in person was something else entirely. The shuttle doors opened, and the wounded came out first. They were carried on stretchers by their fellow crew members, humans who were themselves injured but still moving. Tylus watched them with growing amazement. Some of these people had burns covering half their bodies. Others had broken bones visible through their torn uniforms. One man was missing his left arm below the elbow, the wound hastily sealed with medical foam. He was walking on his own, helping carry a stretcher with his remaining arm. The Volantai medical teams rushed forward to help. They had been briefed on human biology and had prepared specialized equipment. But nothing could have prepared them for what they saw. "This one has internal bleeding," a doctor reported, scanning a human woman on a stretcher. Multiple organ damage. She should be dead. She is too stubborn to die, another human said with a weak smile. Just patch her up, DOC. She has been through worse. Tylis moved through the chaos, trying to coordinate the medical response. She counted the wounded as they came off the shuttles. 47 from the Persistence alone. The ship had started with a crew of 92. Nearly half had been killed or critically injured, and they had done it for strangers, Captain. Elena Vasquez was among the last to leave her ship. She walked down the shuttle ramp slowly, favoring her left leg. Her uniform was torn and burned. A bandage covered one side of her face, stained with blood. But her eyes were alert, scanning the landing pad, checking on her crew. Tylis approached her. Up close, humans were even more intimidating than she had imagined. Vasquez was tall by human standards, with broad shoulders and muscular arms. Her skin was a warm brown color, darker than any Volante. Her eyes were dark and intense, framed by lines that spoke of years of hard living. Captain Vasquez, Tylis said formally, on behalf of the people of Nexus 7, I offer you our deepest gratitude. What you and your crew have done is beyond anything we could have hoped for. Vasquez smiled tiredly. Just doing our job, Governor. How are your people? Everyone make it to the shelters? Thanks to you, yes. All 53,000 civilians survived. We lost some defense personnel in the initial attack, but the colony itself is intact. Good. That is good. Vasquez swayed slightly on her feet. Tylis reached out instinctively to steady her. Captain, you need medical attention immediately. I will be fine. Just need to check on my crew first. Your crew is being cared for by our best doctors. You have done enough. Please, let us help you now. Vasquez hesitated. Tylis could see the conflict in her eyes. The captain wanted to keep working, keep pushing, keep taking care of everyone else. It was deeply human, this inability to rest while others still needed help. Captain Rodriguez can handle things for now, Tylis said gently. Your people are safe. The colony is safe, please. Finally, Vasquez nodded. Okay, but I want updates on every crew member. I need to inspect the Persistence as soon as possible. She took a lot of damage, and I want to know what we are dealing with. Tylis guided Vasquez toward the medical center. As they walked, colonists began to emerge from nearby buildings. They had been watching the landing from windows and doorways. Now they came out into the open, lining the path to the medical center. At first, they were silent. Tylis worried that they might be afraid. Humans were death worlders, after all. The reputation was not easy to overcome. Then someone started clapping. It spread like a wave through the crowd. Clapping and cheering and shouting words of thanks. Volante civilians who had spent hours hiding underground, waiting to die, now filled the streets to honor the humans who had saved them. Some were crying. Others were laughing with relief. Children held up hand-drawn pictures of ships and explosions. Vasquez stopped walking. She stood in the middle of the crowd, surrounded by blue-skinned aliens who had been strangers just hours ago. Her expression was difficult to read. Tylis thought she saw surprise there, and perhaps something deeper. Emotion that the captain was trying hard to control. You are heroes to them, Tylis said quietly. You saved their children, their families, their entire world. We just did what anyone would do, Vasquez replied. No, Captain. You did what no one else would do. The Concordat told us to wait for death. 3 civilian ships crossed 10 hours of space to help people they had never met. That is not normal. That is extraordinary. The medical center had been prepared for human patients. Volante doctors had studied human physiology for years, curious about the species that had evolved on such a hostile world. Now that knowledge was being put to use, Tyler stayed with Vasquez as the doctors examined her. The captain had 3 cracked ribs, a deep gash on her face that needed stitches, severe bruising across her entire body, and early signs of radiation exposure from fighting near damaged power systems. By Volante standards, she should have been unconscious from pain alone. "How are you still walking?" a doctor asked in amazement. Vasquez shrugged, then winced at the pain. "Training, adrenaline, stubbornness. Take your pick. Human pain tolerance is remarkable," the doctor said to Tylus. "Their nervous systems can essentially turn down pain signals during high-stress situations. It allows them to keep functioning through injuries that would incapacitate other species." "Is that why they are called Deathworlders?" Tylus asked. "Partly. It is also their immune systems, their bone density, their muscle strength, their ability to survive temperature extremes, their resistance to toxins. Humans evolved on a world that was actively trying to kill them. They became very difficult to kill in response." Vasquez listened to this conversation with a slight smile. "You make us sound like monsters." "Not monsters," Tyler said quickly, "but certainly not like any species we have encountered before." "Fair enough. We are definitely a strange bunch." Over the next several hours, Tyler visited every human patient in the medical center. She wanted to personally thank each one of them. What she found challenged everything she thought she knew about Deathworlders. The humans were kind. They joked with each other even through serious injuries. They asked about Volante culture and expressed genuine interest in learning about the colony. Several of them had already started making friends with Volante medical staff, sharing stories and exchanging names. One young human named Marcus had lost both his legs below the knee during the battle. He was sitting up in his medical bed, teaching a group of Volante children how to play a simple card game. "Are you not in pain?" Tylus asked him. "Oh, definitely," Marcus replied with a grin. "But these little ones were scared, so I figured I would try to cheer them up. Pain is temporary, you know? Making a kid smile is worth more than a few hours of discomfort." Tylus did not know what to say. This human had given his legs to save her people, and his first thought was to comfort frightened children. She found Captain Rodriguez from the Defiance in another room. He was a large man with a thick beard and arms covered in tattoos. According to the reports, he was a mining foreman who owned his ship outright. He had been hauling ore between systems when the distress call came through. "Can I ask you something, Captain?" Tylus said. "Of course, Governor. Why did you come?" "You had no obligation to help us. You risked your ship and your crew for strangers. Why?" Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about Earth," he said finally. "About the old days before we reached the stars. Humans did terrible things to each other back then. Wars, slavery, genocide. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. But my grandfather always said that the thing that saved us was not our strength or our intelligence. It was our ability to see ourselves in others, to recognize that the stranger on the other side of the world is just as human as you are." He looked at Tylus with surprising gentleness in his rough features. "When I heard your distress call, I did not think about whether you were Volante or human. I just thought about 50,000 people who were going to die if nobody helped them. And I knew I could not live with myself if I did nothing." Tylus felt tears forming in her eyes again. She had cried more in the past day than in the previous decade of her life. "You are not what I expected," she admitted. "The stories about humans, they make you sound frightening." Rodriguez laughed. "We can be frightening when we need to be. The Creth learned that today. But most of the time, we just want the same things everyone else wants. Peace, family, a good meal, and a warm bed. Maybe a few friends to share it with." He extended his hand toward her. Tylus had read about this human greeting. She reached out and clasped his hand in hers. "Welcome to Nexer 7, Captain Rodriguez. You and your people will always have a home here." Rodriguez smiled warmly. "Thank you, Governor. Now, how about you tell me where I can get some food? Saving colonies is hungry work." Despite everything, Tylus laughed. It felt good to laugh again. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Within days, every species in the galactic Concordat had seen the recordings from Nexer 7. They watched the single human ship charge into a Creth swarm. They saw the civilian freighters arrive to join the fight. They witnessed the moment when the swarm broke and fled for the first time in recorded history. The reactions were mixed. Some civilizations demanded immediate action against the humans. They argued that any species capable of defeating the Creth so decisively was a threat to galactic stability. The Rithani ambassador gave a passionate speech warning that humans would eventually turn their violence against peaceful worlds. The Tazori Council proposed strict limitations on human expansion, suggesting that their territory be contained before they grew too powerful. Others saw the recordings differently. The Malani, a species that had lost 3 colony worlds to Creth attacks, petitioned for a formal alliance with humanity. The Vreen traders began negotiating exclusive contracts with human businesses. Dozens of smaller civilizations sent messages of gratitude and friendship. The Concordat High Council convened an emergency session to decide how to respond. Representatives from over 200 member species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall on the capital world of the Sara. The debate lasted for 3 full days. Governor Tylus was invited to testify. She stood before the massive assembly, feeling small and overwhelmed by the weight of so many eyes upon her. But she had seen humans fight for her people. She could find the courage to speak for them. "Distinguished representatives," she began, "I come before you not as a governor or a diplomat, but as a witness. I have seen something that changed everything I thought I knew about the universe." She told them about the distress call, about the Concordat's response that help would arrive too late, about the single human ship that crossed 6 hours of space to face impossible odds. She described the battle in detail, making sure they understood what the humans had sacrificed. 43 human beings died defending my colony," Tylus said, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath it. "They were not soldiers. They were not trained warriors. They were miners and traders and ordinary people who heard that strangers were in trouble and decided to help. They gave their lives for us without asking anything in return." She paused to let the words sink in. "I have heard the arguments that humans are dangerous, that they should be contained or restricted. I understand the fear behind those words. Humans are capable of terrible violence. But I have also seen what they choose to do with that capability." Tylus activated the holographic display behind her. Images appeared showing the aftermath of the battle. Human medics treating Volanti wounded before attending to their own injuries. Human engineers helping repair the colony's life support systems. A human woman with bandaged hands playing with Volanti children to calm their fears. "This is who the humans really are," Tylus continued. "Yes, they are Deathworlders. Yes, they evolved on a planet that forged them into survivors. But they have chosen to use their strength to protect, not to conquer. When my people needed help, they came. When the battle was won, they showed mercy to a defeated enemy. When the crisis ended, they stayed to help rebuild." She looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes of delegates from species she had never encountered. "I cannot speak for all of you. I can only tell you what I witnessed. The humans are not the monsters we feared. They are not the threat we imagined. They are simply people like us, trying to find their place in a vast and often frightening universe. And when they found us in our darkest hour, they chose to be heroes." Tylus stepped down from the speaker's platform. The assembly was silent for a long moment. Then the Milani ambassador rose and began to applaud. Others joined him. Within minutes, the entire hall was filled with the sound of approval that the vote took place that evening. By a margin of 173 to 29, the Galactic Concordat granted humanity full membership status with all rights and privileges. It was the fastest acceptance in Concordat history. The human ambassador to the Concordat was a woman named Dr. Amara Okonkwo. She was not what most species expected from a Deathworlder. She was soft-spoken and thoughtful, with a gentle manner that put others at ease. When she addressed the assembly, she did not boast about the victory at Nexus 7. She did not threaten or demand that. Instead, she talked about Earth. "Our world is beautiful," she said simply. "It has vast oceans and towering mountains, forests that stretch for thousands of kilometers, deserts that glow gold in the sunset. Life in forms so diverse that we have not finished counting them all. But our world is also harsh. We evolved alongside predators that could kill us with a single bite. We survived ice ages that nearly drove us to extinction. We learned to hunt and fight and kill because we had no choice." She paused, her dark eyes thoughtful. "But we also learned something else. We learned that survival alone is not enough. We learned that life without connection is empty. We learned that the bonds we form with each other, with our families and friends and communities, are what make existence worthwhile. Humans are capable of great violence, but we are also capable of great love." Dr. Okonkwo smiled gently at the assembled delegates. "We do not want to conquer the galaxy. We do not seek to dominate other species. We simply want to explore, to learn, to meet new peoples, and discover new wonders. And when we find those who need help, we want to offer it. Not because we expect something in return, but because helping others is who we are." After the ceremony, Captain Vasquez found Dr. Okonkwo on an observation deck overlooking the capital city. The captain's injuries were healing well, though she would carry scars for the rest of her life. She seemed at peace with that. "Nice speech," Vasquez said, joining the ambassador at the window. "Thank you, Captain." "Nice battle." Vasquez laughed softly. "It was not supposed to be that dramatic. We were just responding to a distress call. And yet you changed the course of galactic history. The Kreth have not attacked any world since. Nexus 7. Intelligence reports suggest they are actively avoiding human space and any territory we protect. Fear is a powerful teacher." Dr. Okonkwo turned to look at Vasquez directly. "Is that all it was? Fear?" Vasquez considered the question. "No, not entirely. We showed them something more than just our ability to fight. We showed them that we would not stop. That no matter how much they hurt us, we would keep coming. That is not just scary. It is incomprehensible to a species that has always been the apex predator. They do not know how to process an enemy that refuses to be prey. And now they are spreading stories about us, warning other Kreth to stay away from human space. In a generation or two, they might not even remember why they are afraid. They will just know that humans are not to be touched." Dr. Okonkwo nodded slowly. "Do you think they will ever stop being afraid of us? The other species in the Concordat, I mean. We have done good things, but the fear is still there." Vasquez was quiet for a long moment, watching the alien sun set over the capital city. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "Probably not entirely. We are different from them. We come from a world that made us into something they cannot fully understand. But I think, over time, they will learn what that difference really means. We are scary, yes, but we are scary in a way that protects rather than threatens. The galaxy is a dangerous place, full of things like the Kreth that would destroy civilizations without a second thought. Having humans around makes that danger a little less overwhelming." She smiled slightly. "Maybe being a little scary is not such a bad thing." if it means being scary to the things that hurt others. Dr. Okonkwo returned the smile. I suppose there are worse reputations to have. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge as the sky darkened. Somewhere out there, the Lanti children were growing up with stories about the humans who saved their world. Somewhere, the Kreth were telling their own stories. Warnings passed from generation to generation about the prey that fought back. And somewhere, in hundreds of systems across the galaxy, other species were starting to see humans not as monsters to be feared, but as neighbors to be welcomed. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be quite the same. Captain Vasquez thought about her crew, about the 43 who had died at Nexus 7. They had known the risks when they accepted the mission. They had gone anyway, because that was what humans did. They ran toward danger instead of away from it. They sacrificed themselves for strangers. They chose to be heroes when being heroes might kill them. It was terrifying and beautiful and deeply, profoundly human. We should get back, Vasquez said finally. I have a ship to repair and a crew to rebuild. Dr. Okonkwo nodded. Will you return to patrol duty? Eventually. There are always more distress calls. More people who need help. More chances to prove that humans are worth having around. They walked together back into the building, leaving the observation deck empty except for the starlight streaming through the windows. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and dangers that no one could predict. But for the first time in galactic history, humanity was part of that future. Not as conquerors or threats, but as protectors. The Deathworlders had arrived. And they had chosen to be kind.